dedicated to a very challenging topic. Our session concerns the multipolar financial system, new possibilities, and just multipolarity of the global finance. Everything has started after the end of the Second World War, when dollar was introduced as the global currency. If we're looking forward to entering the multipolar world with BRICS participation, we should not only think about, but be very active in introduction our national currencies, in developing the financial relations of our financial institutions, banks, trade relations, and things like that. The questions that we are planning to discuss are indicated in the program, and I would ask the speakers that represent different scientific schools of our member countries to answer these questions, but it's not limited. They can speak on the topics that they would prefer within the subject that we are actually having. So the first speaker, let me introduce Dr. Professor Mikhail Stolbov. He is the head of the Department of Applied Economics, deeply involved in research in macroeconomics, has a list of publications and they are of an interest within the globe, let's put it like that. He is one of the professors of the Moscow State Institute of International Relations under the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation. The floor is yours. Welcome, please.
Thank you very much for such warm words and extensive introduction. So I'm going to discuss the topic predicting systemic risk in the Russian financial sector with machine learning methods. A natural question arises how it all relates to the subject of the session and the forum at large. Well, I would say that the link is pretty much straightforward. Financial stability is closely linked to building a just financial system worldwide. Well, just imagine when a country which experiences a financial distress attempts to secure her own interests in different negotiations. And of course, it is reasonably problematic. Therefore, it is important to maintain financial stability in order to have a strong voice internationally. Another question which comes here is how we measure financial stability, how we proxy financial stability. Of course, there are different approaches to offering various metrics, various measures for financial stability. I represent the school of thought which considers financial stability as an integral thing, and therefore I would propose a holistic, a comprehensive indicator of financial stability called systemic risk. And this type of indicator does not boil down to standalone financial risks, which are well known, such as credit risk, market risk, etc. In the study, in the speech which I'm delivering now, I would focus on conditional capital shortfall as the key indicator of systemic risk. It is very convenient for cross-country comparisons, for international comparisons. On the slides which are being broadcast, you can see the formula, you can see how this capital shortfall could be computed, but the main idea is that if this measure has positive values, then something is wrong with financial stability of a particular financial institution. And if we aggregate these metrics across all financial institutions in the country, then we can conclude that financial stability is at risk, actually, for the whole country. I'm not going to delve into the technical details of this indicator. Just believe me that it is widely used by researchers to proxy the stance of financial stability in this or that country. And as I've noted before, it is very convenient since it is publicly available for a wide number of countries. Now closer to the countries we are all interested in. Here you can see conditional capital shortfall as a fraction of GDP for core BRICS countries. You can see that China has the largest value here, over 7% of GDP. Well, I would even say that China stands out not only among the BRICS economies, it is actually the world champion in terms of as risk, in terms of systemic risk. As for the rest of the BRICS countries, you can see that these shares, these ratios are substantially lower, and in case of the Russian Federation, it is even below 1%. And does this mean that we should be, complacent, that we should be content with ourselves? By no means, because we have to monitor and track the dynamics of systemic risk across different time periods, and what's more, we have to be aware of the indicators more or less typical for the bankers, for those who work with currency markets, etc., that would enable to forecast systemic risk as a holistic indicator of financial stability. Here you can see the dynamics of conditional capital shortfall for Russia over time. You can see three peaks. The first one referring to the global financial crisis, then comes the 2014-2015 crisis, which is specific to the Russian Federation, and the peak which refers to the pandemic period. My idea in this study is to construct a model for conditional capital shortfall for Russia on a relatively wide number of potential predictors, and to this end I apply quite fancy algorithms, machine learning algorithms, random forest and boosting. These algorithms have become quite popular recently, and they are now extensively used in financial stability analysis. And another advantageous feature is that these techniques are well suited in case of small to medium-sized data sets, which, I have in this study. Here on the slide you can see the input indicators, the potential predictors, which we consider as those which would help us understand the dynamics of systemic risk for the Russian Federation. They're divided in three blocks. First and foremost, we deal with macroeconomic indicators, pretty much standard ones, ranging from industrial production growth to key policy rate dynamics in our country. Then comes a set of international variables, which normally play a huge role for open economies. Here you can see the global volatility index, VIX. You can see economic policy uncertainty index, and also two indices which capture financial stress in the United States, and also the stance of the US monetary policy. Then comes a block of financial variables which are specific to the Russian Federation. Non-performing loans to proxy credit risk. Here you can see also the share of foreign assets in total bank assets to proxy currency risk. Loans to deposits ratio, which stands for liquidity risk. And of course we can't do without the stock market dynamics. And it's also relevant for the banking sector as well. That's a proxy for market risk. Now, without any technicalities, which are very important, but which may be, well, quite boring, I would suggest discussing the results. The key result here is, as I've noted before, is the relative importance of the inputs, of the potential predictors of systemic risk. Well, here is the result for the whole period from 2008 to March 2024. You can see that the main predictors are associated with nominal exchange rate dynamics in Russia. So also you can see broad money, M2 aggregate dynamics, non-performing loans, and also somewhere in the middle and a bit lower you can see the international variables. The VIX does matter for our systemic risk. Also, you can see that economic policy uncertainty contributes to its developments, etc. But here we should be concerned with the question whether these results are sufficient or not in terms of the period heterogeneity. Of course, the period from 2008-2014 was rich in various events, both pleasant and unpleasant ones, in terms of financial stability in the Russian Federation. Therefore, another step that we should make is to divide this period into, well, two sub-periods, more or less homogeneous inside. The first of them is from 2008 to 2014, since there was a substantial change in the monetary policy implementation in that year, and the rest from 2014 to 2024. Let's see how it affects the results. Well, here on the slide you can see the same diagrams actually, but with somewhat different contents. For the first period before 2014, you can see that the most of indicators which contribute to the dynamics of Russian systemic risk tend to be international ones. When we see to the opposite side of the slide and analyze the contents of the second diagram, we see that a more significant role is now played by domestic factors. That's an important thing that should be highlighted here. Systemic risk in the Russian Federation has different underpinnings within these two periods, and in the more recent period, let me say in the period which is closer to the current time, the most important predictors come from inside. That means that the Russian financial system becomes less dependent on the external factors. Well, of course, that's a claim that should be, well, further refined, further analyzed, but that's what the data says, at least. Now you can see the table which generalizes my assertion, my claim. You can see that for the period before 2015, VIX, geopolitical risk, financial stress in the United States are important variables. When we turn to the current period, we see that non-performing loans, well, that is the lending quality in the Russian banking sector tends to matter more. And also you can note that exchange rate dynamics has dropped out, actually, has ceased to become an important factor in the recent period. Now, to conclude, I would like to highlight several takeaways from my presentation, which I attempted to make more verbal and less technical. First of all, it's very important to monitor and predict systemic risk in the Russian financial sector in order to inform the regulator which most common, more typical indicators could be used to forecast systemic risk. Also, you can note this important shift in the relative relevance of predictors. International variables tend to lose their importance, and that allows me to posit a question. Of course, it is an open question so far, and it merits further research. It is noted as the last bullet point here. Can this finding, namely the fact that external factors play a less role now, be viewed as an indirect sign of increasing financial sovereignty? So this study, which is of course work in progress, shows us that at least there is some sign that financial sovereignty has been strengthening in the case of the Russian Federation. And I would suggest that similar studies, perhaps with different techniques, could be conducted for the rest of the BRICS economies in order to see how this dependence on international factors and domestic ones changes over time. That's very important for forecasting financial stability of these countries. And back to my very first assertion, if we secure financial stability inside, then such countries, fully resilient, without financial crisis, could participate equally and successfully in building a just financial system worldwide. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stolbov. We really share your approach, and it's a good contribution to our mutual research as far as the financial stability of our countries are concerned. And it goes without saying that we should manage all kinds of risks as far as the complex approach is concerned. And financial risk is just within the systemic one. Thank you for your presentation. And dear colleagues, let me introduce another speaker, Luca Pereira Horta from Brazil. He is a researcher. The International Intelligence Unit within the Vargas Foundation he represents, and the foundation was set up in 1944, and it contributes greatly to education and research, not only for Brazil, but for Latin America. And it's a very well-known institution as the research one. Welcome, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk about a topic that's important not only for monetary policy, but I'll try to show that it's important for trade too, and therefore for development and growth. That is the replacing of the US dollar, at least for now, already in a sizable share of international transactions. And the importance of the theme, this theme, I think, that comes from the desire from many countries to export in its own currency because of the political use of the dollar, mainly. And this implies that it makes the currencies, the domestic currencies from the BRICS countries, and I'm going to talk a lot about the BRICS currencies, their importance or their credibility, making it more related to trade volumes and to their trade importance. So we know for a fact first that even though there are many hubs in international trade, Actually, the world trade is pretty spread. So from taking gravity equations, for instance, we know that many variables, such as distance and income and culture and common language and common currency are very important to determine, so are very important variables that helps to explain trade. But in fact, what we see, what we are still saying is the hegemony of the US dollar in international transactions that is not proportional to their importance as trade partners for the rest of the world. I will allow this possibility that the credibility concentration, this credibility concentration effect, or on one or just a few currencies, can be partially explained by what you can call scale effects. So, by one side, it's very convenient to have an international currency. That's true. That may be true. And by the way, the dollar is not the first hegemon currency. First, it was the British pound after the First World War, and then with Bretton Woods in the Second World War, it became the dollar. So about this convenience, or this, what I'm calling these scale effects. So we can think about an exporting firm that will produce today taking into account expected future revenues. Well, it may not produce as much if it will be paid in a more volatile, we can say a riskier currency. There's more risk in a currency that is more volatile, or there is a risk of default from the country, for instance, or some capital outflow from that country. In this sense, it is efficient to have an hegemon, or at least a small set of currencies, the most credible currencies, because their price will not fall suddenly as other firms and other countries will keep using that currency. But the deterioration of the US deficit and international sanctions applied by the US, of course this list is not exhaustive, they became relevant to explain the replacement of the dollar, or the dollar now seen as a riskier currency. At least central banks, they seem to have already realized this new reality. Data that is too much, that's cited everywhere. So for IMF reporter members, the US dollar represented 67% of allocated foreign exchange reserves in 2002, and only 59% 20 years later, in 2022. And something similar happens with the euro. The dollar and the euro combined decreased from 91% of these allocated reserves to 79% in the same period, from this 20 years span of time. So it's a 12 percentage point drop. And we see that many candidates appear in the most recent data as the pound sterling, the Japanese yen, and the Chinese renminbi. The Chinese renminbi that had claims that were negligible 20 years ago, now it is starting to show some importance on international foreign exchange reserves. Even though I think we can still expect in the mid-run the dollar as a main currency, the BRICS represent a clear alternative. The BRICS countries are already a more important trade partner than the US and the European Union combined for many, if not most, countries in Asia, South America, and Africa, including the BRICS members themselves. And I've just watched this session on trade where this is reinforced, the importance of the BRICS countries in the worldwide trade. And of course, one needs this kind of scale in order to substitute the dollar. provided that scale type of arguments are still very relevant. Of course, this is not a sufficient, but it is a necessary condition. Even if let's call it a quasi-currency for international transactions, is too far from reality. So maybe with some characteristics of currency. And it may be far from reality now because the negotiation process is a very complex cooperative game, and we don't know if we can reach some consensus on that. Different countries have different priorities and different preferences over it. Even if this is the case, I think that the contingent reserves arrangements by the BRICS already do allow the substitution of the dollar to some extent. As the BRICS countries become more protected against these consequences of capital outflows and financial speculation, it reduces the risk to BRICS currencies and therefore can allow for more trade in the BRICS countries' currencies, in their domestic currencies, meaning without damaging trade. And I think this is a very important point because we are saying that we can do it and without damaging the trade. What is happening under the dollar, and I think this is the main problem, is that it's causing trade diversion, it's causing trade destruction right now with economic sanctions, for instance, and trade wars, of course. So other way to put it is that the contingent reserve arrangements might diminish the importance of the scale effects, as the countries are more well protected now under this arrangement. They don't need, they may not need all that scale exactly because the risk of some capital outflow or financial speculation or default diminishes. And of course, there may take some time to recognize that, but my point is that this possibility of the substitution or maybe making it faster, I think it depends on BRICS. I think that the BRICS countries may lead this de-dollarization, let's call it. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Just, it goes without saying that one of the goals of BRICS is just to introduce national currencies, local currencies into the market. We made a research and came to conclusion that actually, quite right, dollar is playing its role within the new bank, NDB, is just also engaged in US dollars. And we consider that probably taking into consideration the recommendations of BRICS declarations, they should pay more attention to national currencies. Because it's strange to know that the financing of Russian projects was just in Swiss francs. Why it should be. Then your idea as far as the CRA is also worthwhile taking into consideration. And the other aspect that can be just reasonable for developing trade financing, to use some new instruments, taking into consideration the new countries that entered BRICS with all scale of Islamic finance. And we should think about, study it, and come to conclusion that it will be fruitful for our countries. So thank you very much indeed. Then I would like to ask Pradarshit Dash from India, the Associate Professor, Research and Information System for Developing Countries, RIS Institute, to take the floor. And I should note that RIS plays a very important role within BRICS with its research as far as new technologies, economics, and finance is concerned. Welcome, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and I must thank my two previous speakers for raising some critical issues that are of concern to BRICS. First of all, I would like to thank the BRICS Export Council for inviting me to speak in this session. We are talking about multilateral, reviving multilateralism, and that very much apply to finance. So that the world of finance is fragmented or it needs to be reformed. This has been a very long debate for quite some time. If you see the BRICS finance track, it has identified all major problems and possible solutions to those problems in the form of reforms, creation of new institutions or mechanisms. From time to time, since 2009 onwards, we have seen enormous literature has been created on the BRICS process, and that applies to the finance as well. By and large, if you notice, the financial crisis in the past have been the primary source of inspiration for the discourse on reform of international financial architecture, be it BRICS, G20, G7, ASEAN, or any other forum for that matter. Financial crisis kept on recurring. Hence, we talk about reforms and solutions. Perhaps time has come to think about the merit of those ideas, those were there on the table 10 years back. I'll give certain examples later. When I say merit of those issues or suggestions, what I mean that the ideas and the possible solutions should not be reactionary. Short-term ad hoc policies just to counter to the fixing the, say, dislocations in the financial system during a financial crisis. Rather, it should be well conceived, rooted in generating strong positive developmental outcomes for the emerging markets and the developing countries in general. For example, sustainable development goals. And should be responsive to the capacity and resources of those economies. Many a time we come up with standard textbook solutions without recognizing that the level of development varies from country to country, even though they are parties to some same arrangement. And for that matter, BRICS countries are similar or dissimilar at the same time on many parameters. If you analyze the past BRICS commitments, both in the leaders' declaration and in the finance ministers, central bank governors' communique, it indicates that a larger part of the suggested reforms are related to addressing the structural vulnerabilities facing the developing countries in achieving inclusive and sustainable development. For instance, I mean, it goes to all chairships of the BRICS, but just for illustration purposes, in 2010, during the Brazilian chairmanship, there was emphasis on increase in capital of IBRD and IFC and local currency trade settlement. This was 2010. We are talking about local currency settlement in 22 in South Africa and today. Very much appreciated that time as well. And when you say increase in the capital of IBRD and IFC, we are talking about increase in the capital of the MDB family in general. And that too, the two successive presidencies of G20, India, Indonesia have come up with 3 reports on how the MDBs could be playing a catalytic role in mobilizing capital for development. So where we are in terms of reforms. 10 years back we discussed that, today we are talking about that. So we need to seriously consider about where is the gap. Similarly, during the Indian presidency, Indian chairmanship of BRICS in 2012, there was a pressing need for enhancing the flow of development finance to emerging markets. Along with that, there was emphasis on reducing the cost of lending, adopting innovative lending tools, and avoiding excessive global liquidity creation. Don't you think that we are discussing the same thing now? So, and another example, during 2013 South African presidency, there was concern for high public and private debt, 2013. And 2012, during the COVID time, the debt level worsened so much that we again started questioning that what should be the debt resolution mechanisms, both sovereign debt and the private debt. So there is a cycle of ideas surfacing on the same platform again and again, and perhaps we need to consolidate our work in that matter. What I'll do, when we talk about reform of international financial architecture, the literature is vast. There are several areas that we can talk about, but I'll just focus on 2-3 core issues, again keeping the emphasis on enhancing finance, access to finance by the larger developing countries, because that's the core of the financial system reform. Ensuring macroeconomic discipline, supervisory coordination, that was the focus immediately after this subprime crisis in 2007-8. But then we can't just keep on focusing on stability at the cost of development. We need to enhance the flow of capital to countries that badly need those, because their domestic resources are not enough. So the first issue that I would like to emphasize is the credit rating. Because credit rating has become a sort of qualifying metric for the countries to have access to international capital. If you have certain good quality credit score, sovereign rating, then you will probably access the capital market and some forms of the external finance. Otherwise, it is no for you. But if you see the industry, global credit rating industry, it is very heavily concentrated and oligopolistic in nature. A few players dominate the rating business, which very often found unrealistic, and they fail to make proper assessment of the risk build-up. There are several examples of that. And they prioritize profits, shareholder value, unlike regulatory agencies that focus on public interest. So how much of public interest priorities the credit rating agencies put emphasis when doing this rating is not sure. And hence there is a lot of, concerns regarding that. The regulation and licensing of the credit agencies are minimal. They follow standard methodology with plus minus of 1 or 2 indicators, and then sort of drive certain things, focusing on the institutional quality and other things. Let me tell you that if a country suffers from civil war for whatever reason, or some sort of crisis recurring in that country, do you think that the country will be presenting a very high macroeconomic picture in a few years after they overcome this crisis? That is unlikely. And so that they'll continue to carry a low credit rating for some time, which makes them ineligible to get access to the international capital market. So there are problems. I'm not going into the details, whether the capital requirement, the asset value, the collateral, all sorts of things that they consider are very much subject to scrutiny. The agencies like the 3 ones, Standard & Poor, Moody's, Fitch, they have been accused of exacerbating the financial crisis and offering favorable evaluation to the enterprises that they would like to favor. And there are models that whether we should go for issuer model or other forms of the credit rating methodology, but that is something that we need to discuss. So the rating agencies very often ignore the massive deterioration in the credit worthiness of the of certain asset categories. There are examples from Greece, US itself, the failure to assess AIC's deteriorating balance sheet, the collapse of Lehman Brothers. You don't need any other example that how robust the credit rating business was. In fact, the government of India in 2021 said that the credit rating agencies failed to accurately assess the underlying economic potential of the country. The fundamentals were good. The economy has undertaken reform in the form of ease of doing was elevated by 10 to 12 ranks in 2-3 years. There was rapid, say, reform in the form of the legal, the bankruptcy and other areas, but still those are not reflected in those credit scores, credit rating values. So what does it mean, whether there is something there to reform? Second, I still, it's on the same point that my friend from Brazil was speaking, the use of local currencies or national currencies for trade settlement. You know, you have find your own argument, but I would still go in favor of using national currencies for local trade settlements. Because imagine the era in 1960s and 50s where the newly independent nations did not have any stock of hard currency. They had to compromise on the goods that they can import. So when you restrict the imports, that includes capital goods also. You are actually compromising with the development prospects of that country. And that was a major foreign exchange constraint which did not allow the countries to go for, say, have proper, say, factory equipments, technology, so that they kept on depending on their own resources. Now, how does a country sort of build up its foreign exchange reserves so that you can comfortably import goods, essential goods, capital goods, and any other goods that you need for the population? You have to export more. If you need to export more, you have to, say, undergo a complete transformation in economic production and system so that your products are competitive, both in terms of price and the technology. And you have to pursue it over time so that you can build up the foreign exchange reserves to sort of have access to that, which is not the case. The East Asian countries, till 1997, despite of being export-oriented economies, were not thinking of holding that much of foreign exchange reserves because they felt that we are open, we have access to international capital. They were happily borrowing short-term and investing long-term. When the financial crisis happened, they realized that the servicing the short-term debt of 1 year or less than that of maturity, they had no money to pay. And you saw the exchange rate crashing Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines in a contagious fashion. So had it not been the hard currency, they perhaps could have solved it. Then the whole bunch of ideas came of local currency debt market, borrowing in local currency, having currency swap arrangements. So all these instruments are precautionary instruments that in case of low stock of foreign exchange reserves, we can manage provided we have these mitigating instruments. So local currency use is an instrument to mitigate the low access to financial foreign exchange reserves or possibly very less probability of holding sufficient reserves. But more than that, it says that, as the concept note mentions, this should not be a weapon, that the US Fed is the issuing currency, reserve currency, issuing currency, so they have the privilege of having independent monetary policy and the rest of the world will follow. So there is a need for going for multiple reserve currency, euro and other emerging market currencies. In fact, why Chinese currency will only be part of the SDR when they revise during the 5th revision of the code SDR composition. There should be Indian currency, there should be Brazilian currency, there could be many other emerging market currencies who are eligible to be part of the global transactions. And if you see, I have my own paper, we have seen that the share of US dollar, euro, sterling has gradually come down in the total foreign exchange buffer in the world. And the emerging markets are increasing. There is nothing wrong in that. We need to promote a system where no single currency monopolizes the financial transactions. Imagine it has happened to Russia, it could happen to you, it could happen to India, it could happen to any other country, that if the SWIFT does not work, then you have no means to pay. Had it been several other payment systems, perhaps that could not have been the case. So weaponizing certain instruments should be avoided. I'm not talking about any particular country or any particular currency for that matter. Second, the new generation of financial innovations that we are witnessing in the form of fintech, central bank digital currencies, crypto assets, these are the assets which are sort of the finer, clever, packaging of risks and return by the financial fraternity, which we should thank them that they come up with all such of products. But our regulatory systems are not prepared to sort of embrace and promote those assets, because those assets are not traded in a conventional platform through the trade brokerage firms and others. Those are traded in the digital platforms. For example, the fintech solutions. Now, unlike a bank, you don't have to go to any bank physical branch. You just place your claim or request on the mobile app, and you claim for certain amount. If your credibility, if you have a sound credit score, then they will approve it and you will get the money back in your account in 10 minutes, less than 10 minutes. In fact,
I'm very sorry interrupting. You have
just 1 minute.
1 minute.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the crypto assets, the Bitcoin and others, that appear to be lucrative asset, because perhaps the high returns experience somewhere tells that these are the assets that one could invest. But then our regulatory system, those who have, the central banks have been following for quite some time, and need to buy time. The G20 presidency of India has appreciated these issues, and all the countries unanimously endorsed that perhaps the crypto assets needs to be understood much more thoroughly and with clarity for quite some time before we allow formal trading of those in the stock exchanges and other units. So just to conclude, that BRICS financial track has generated enough of ideas. Now today we are in a state of the global financial system where we come back to the same sort of inventory of ideas, and what we need to do perhaps is to think about that a conscious approach of following certain policies which are of immediate use, and sort of examining the feasibility of some bold proposals like crypto, the fintech solutions, and all these should be understood through research papers by the BRICS Academic Forum and all of us. And then we see that BRICS has some mechanism of its own to mitigate the adverse impacts of the global financial crisis, rather than waiting for another crisis to happen and think about radical solutions to that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dash. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. They're really precious. And I would like just to mention that the problem of new instruments and tools that can be suggested to the market depends on priorities that can be provided to our BRICS participants. And the other aspect as to about the access to the financial markets are concerned, it depends on the infrastructure development, because most financing goes through intermediaries, through banks at the moment. But there is the possibility to open ways for direct financing through stock exchanges. In 2017, there was an agreement between the countries and stock exchanges to develop relations. But the question of local currency and the exchange rates depends on the infrastructure problems. Thank you very much indeed. Then I take the opportunity just to present Tu Yang-Huang, China, the Dean of Yangtze River Economic Zone Research Institution, Renmin University of China, and that is the very well-known research institution, and there are a lot of publications that are of an interest to BRICS. Welcome, please.
Thank you. I'm pleased to give my arguments on how BRIC countries improve international monetary system, I have 3 points. The first point, we need a reform of IMS. The current international monetary system cannot satisfy the great changes of the 21st century and needs reform. Climate change, slowdown in economy and population growth, an expansion gap between the rich and the poor, an increasing geopolitical conflicts and government debt. These huge challenges are breaking the balance of IMS and deepening the fragment of it. So BRICS should work together and promote the reform of IMS to reshape a better and just IMS. After 5 new members joined BRICS, BRICS are more powerful in energy, manufacturing, service, and financial market that can strengthen the resilience of the world industrial and supply chain. We hope that BRICS work together and play a more important role in international financial governance. The second point, we must solve 3 problems in IMS. First, tariff dilemma of the US dollar. Based on dollar's dominant position as a key currency, the United States continue to provide dollar liquidity through trade deficit while make capital inflow through treasury bonds. Today's tariff dilemma closely related to dollar liquidity and US fiscal deficit. It's different from the past. With the increasing US government debt and bipartisan tension, worries about the potential US government debt default have risen. Obviously, the volatility of dollar liquidity has increased over the last 20 years, resulting in the huge fluctuation in financial markets and capital flow. Emerging countries and developing countries have suffered frequently from large currency devaluation and financial crisis. So, diversification of international currency is proved to be a good remedy to solve the current tariff dilemma problem of the US dollar. 2, unfair IMF quotas. IMF has become the core of the current IMS. The current quotas of IMF is unjust. It cannot represent the economic importance of each member countries today. Its governance is dominated by Western countries, especially in the United States. For example, with the rise of the Global South, China has become the second largest economy, contributing more than 30% of global economic growth. However, the quota of China is very small, only 6.39. Meanwhile, the quotas of the United States is 17.43. The IMF's board of directors requires a majority of 85% for important decisions. This gives the US de facto veto power. Because of the quotas of the China and other BRIC countries, are too small in comparison with those of advanced countries. So I think the most important reform of IMF is adjusting its quotas to have greater fairness. Third, supply of international liquidity. Because of the decade of low interest rate, balance of sheet effect become greater. The global debt increased to a new record. It's reached at 313 trillion US dollar in 2023. Threats of currency mismatch and debt default is fast increasing. Since the 1980s, the Federal Reserve of the United States has raised the interest rate for 7 times. The last one happened in 2023. Go back to the history. You can see whenever the Fed hikes interest rate, international liquidity tightened. Debt crisis or financial crisis broke out in some countries, particularly in emergency and developing countries. Although the Fed has a currency swap arrangement for 5 major advanced countries' central banks, providing dollar liquidity to their financial markets, it is far from insufficient to meet the huge demands in other countries. So it's very urgent to set up effective global financial safety. And BRICS should find ways to increase global liquidity supply to prevent an emergent debt crisis to happen. The third point, we should take effective and forceful actions. First, we should reshape multi-currency framework and increase supply of international liquidity. Just as European countries use the euro as a regional currency, countries those have close economic and trade relationship with China, especially those in Asia and along the Belt and Road, increasingly choose Chinese renminbi instead of the US dollar. China is capable of addressing liquidity in the world market. For example, in 2023, the issuance of renminbi bond in Hong Kong reached 566.8 billion yuan, easing a lot the US dollar constraint for many countries. People's Bank of China also has bilateral currency swap arrangement with 31 central banks. With more and more integration among BRICS, it's crucial for BRIC countries to use their own currency for trade settlement and investment, in nurturing their own welfare for member countries. Second, we should enforce the role of BRICS in MS governance, incorporate more voice from the global South, and ensure that the IMF is more up-to-date and more just. Efforts should be made to pass the dual quota formula under the 7th General Reserve of quotas by June 2025 to guide the next quota adjustment to make IMF quotas distribution more representative of each member's economic importance globally. And I also think financial resources should be distributed to support the real economy growth.
I'm awfully sorry interrupting. Just 1 minute
just
left.
one.
Yeah. Thank you.
Last, promote increasing financial instrument for digital currency, such as mBridge. In the digital currency era, it is necessary to establish a new monetary cross-border payment system based on central bank digital currency. In August 2022, 20 commercial banks from China, Hong Kong, the United Arab Emirates, and Thailand, as well as their central banks, completed the first pilot test based on real transaction signals on mBridge using multi-CBDC for a total of 164 cross-border payment and foreign exchange settlements. Compared with the traditional payment system based on agent banks and SWIFT, mBridge has a point-to-point decentralized framework and could reduce currency, save time, and improve trade efficiency. Most importantly, mBridge not only supply new public goods, but also ensure its member countries to avoid any harm by weaponized of dollar. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. There's a comment. Yeah?
Just forgot to, in the credit rating thing, what I was telling that India had proposed a BRICS credit rating agency few years back, which did not work. So I wish to propose that proposal should be examined again in the context of BRICS.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for mentioning the IMF reform. But anyway, we probably should go our own way, just participating in the global financial markets as BRICS. Yeah? Dear colleagues, I would like to thank you for your profound contribution to the general discussion as far as our session is concerned. And I would like to ask our colleagues to come here and we'll rotate. Thank you very much indeed. I'll ask actually Ronnie Makwadi, Mahdi Fakheri, Ali Benwari, and Michael Yershov, just to take the places. Спасибо. Sorry, we can continue, yeah? Is there any problem? It's okay at the moment? Okay. We'll continue, actually, and I'm happy to present you Rooney Makwadi, South Africa. He is a professor of the Nelson Mandela University, the university that was founded in 2005, and the roots go to the 19th century, let's put it like that, as the research institution, as the education center. It's just a kind of the most diverse institution as the South Africa is concerned. Welcome, please.
Thanks very much, Chair. Where do I change this thing? The remote? Thank you so much. Well, I'm not going to be long. I just want to dwell on two main pillars in my talk today, and that is, if you look, this is why the world is not becoming multipolar, just finance. So I'm going to be dwelling on this question, why the world is not becoming multipolar. Where are the binding constraints? Then I'll talk about the just finance, right? So we cannot not but first talk about multipolarity, this concept, right? This concept is often discussed in terms of geopolitical power dynamics, right? However, its realization extends beyond that, extends beyond politics, to include economic, cultural, even technological spheres. So it cuts across the whole spectrum. So economic multipolarity, in particular, is crucial as it signifies a more balanced distribution of economic power among various countries or regions, and also reduces the reliance on a single dominant economic force. So I cannot not but mention the big organizations that are at the moment forming part of the existing financial architecture, globally speaking. That is the IMF and the World Bank. The IMF and the World Bank use a particular language. Whenever they talk about what they are doing, they'll talk about stabilization and adjustment. And those stabilization and adjustment come with conditionalities. And amongst others, is trade liberalization. Well, we can debate about its benefits and, of course, its discontents. Reduction in government expenditure. What is the impact of that in developing countries, if it's a condition, right? Deregulation of trade. Devaluation of currency. Wage restraint, privatization, and so on. I'm not going to dwell on each of those. Each of them has pros and cons. So I'm not going to veer this discussion towards that. I'm just going to put those things there as to what those are conditionalities. But the outcome of that is havoc. Maybe not just African countries, maybe developing countries, right? Which some of them are regarded as developmental states, which depend a lot on government spending. Now, needless to mention the issue of debt service for those countries that are subjected to those debts, which some of them fail even to repay. And that is aggravated also by the interest rates, which when the US, of course, raise interest rates, they've got to pay that premium plus interest. And we have evidence that shows that a number of these countries that are subjected to these debts fail to grow in order to pay back that debt. And therefore they stay stuck. Hence the question, why is the world not becoming multipolar? So I have to do that to show you this thing, right? And we need to tackle this thing head on and see how as BRICS we can attend to this problem. So now there's a disjuncture between dogma and reality. What is being said out there and what is happening down at the grassroots level on the ground floor. What's happening on the ground floor? The Bretton Woods system continued to proclaim poverty reduction, better living standards, debt reduction. You read IMF 2019. Read the work of Zulik, read the work of Ravalian, 2016. They refer to that statements. But if you look at the work of Mpande, it says these countries, these developing countries, are facing a threat of fiscal sustainability. Hence, they have to carry this deficit, twin deficit, which is your current account deficit and, of course, your fiscal deficit. How do you then cope to grow and be established and still pay back these loans? Why is the world not becoming multipolar? the African debt crisis is conveniently ascribed to poor leadership. That's easy. Corruption and incompetence. And you buy that. Oh, wow, Africa. Oh, wow, developing countries. That's a problem. On the contrary, if you read the work of Kwambuka, the work of Kingston, the work of Nema, and the work of Zinyana, they say the Bretton Woods system, institutions, maybe are at the bottom of this, we don't know, through this unipolar system, dominant currency, or economic system, so to speak. How do we turn this around? A just finance. As BRICS, we need to recognize the sovereignty of the member states. We need to understand the issues of development. Hence we have NDB, because we are of the opinion that NDB understands where as developing countries we come from, right? And therefore, when you negotiate the deal, we are happy that we talk to people that understand our paradigm. Equality principle, that we are all equal. There's no big me, small you. We come as equal partners on this, around this table. Fairness and justice. Inclusivity. I want to add one principle there that next to inclusivity. No one must be left behind. That is a very important principle, that no one must be left behind. Inclusivity. Because we want BRICS to champion the post-rhetoric era. We want BRICS to champion the multipolarity. And we have what it takes. In my opinion, I'm convinced that we do have what it takes. It has already started. We mustn't forget about environmental protection, because if we do not look after the green economy, it will destroy all the gains and benefits we have accumulated up to this point. Peaceful conflict resolution. In South Africa, we believe on what we call Ubuntu. We believe in negotiations. The apartheid regime was destroyed not at the barrel of the gun, but around the table of negotiations. And we are proud about that. High level of transparency. Because transparency goes with accountability. What's happening behind the scenes? Open discussions, open table. That to me is a just finance system. It's not a system that's placed on, I'm going to control it the rest of your life. Towards the development of the international financial and monetary architecture through BRICS, the steps now towards building this new global finance architecture. BRICS should foster a more multipolar world order. Let us take that as our mandate and as our principle. Let's take that as our mission. Let's talk about it. We need to promote diversification on the global governance and champion this. We need to develop alternative financial mechanisms, e.g. the NDB and the contingency reserve arrangement, to reduce reliance on the traditional sources. Expand access to financial services to emerging markets and developing economies. BRICS should coordinate and cooperate on monetary policy and promote macroeconomic stability. I know that's going to be hard to do, but it's no problem in thinking about it, because our findings suggest that while we fail to become an optimum currency area, somebody was speaking about a single currency, one of the platforms. A study was done on that. And the main thing we found was the lack of coordination of our shocks. They're not synchronized. And when you check behind why our shocks not synchronized, because there's no policy coordination. And I know that when you talk about monetary and fiscal policy, those are things that we need to have a very deep discussions about. It's not easy as it is there. Because you tend to kind of lose your autonomy in terms of your monetary policy. But we can discuss that. BRICS should prioritize use of local currencies in international transaction settlement. And also we need to increase visibility and our voice in matters regarding emerging markets. How do we strengthen cooperation within NDB and offer new momentum to BRICS Bank? Keep high credit ratings from international credit ratings in order to raise capital cheaply from bond markets and lend at lower interest rates. I'm not talking about the credit rating institutions. It's another point, a sensitive point. Perhaps it needs to be unpacked that as well. What are those credit ratings? Who are they? Shall BRICS have its own credit ratings? Maybe we need to consider that, I don't know. Use of local currency bond program in order to make each other's currencies available to all members. Expand membership. BRICS Plus. We welcome that. It takes us somewhere. It strengthens us. The more the merrier. The bigger the better. Enhance technology and innovation. Protect the fabric of multilateralism and promote joint work with other multilateral development banks. Otherwise, we cannot go it alone. We cannot go it alone. We need to have complementary and supplementary institutions to NDB. Go beyond. Let's not say, well, we have NDB, we have arrived. We haven't arrived. We haven't arrived. A lot of work needs to be done. Hence, we appreciate gatherings like these. Trade Facilitation Agency, promote investments. How do you draw investments? Earlier on, I was speaking about intra-BRICS investments, both foreign portfolio investment as well as foreign direct investment. Capital flows, inflows within BRICS fraternal. We need that. BRICS Innovation Entrepreneurship Hub, so that our young people do not graduate into unemployment, but we boost this entrepreneurship, and we need to share the skills. How does China do it? How does Brazil, Russia, and so on? How do you help your young people avoid unemployment, even your graduates? We need to share that. So Entrepreneurship Hub is very important. BRICS Research and Development Institute, where we have joint research projects. Energy Agency is important, right? Energy is a source of power to grow the economy, and it's a vital source. So we need to have something like that. BRICS Social and Cultural Exchange, I put there, including creative economy. Our diversity is our strength. We learn from each other's cultures. We can be able to absorb our young people into creative industry amongst ourselves as BRICS, and with that, we're able to expand our foot to other countries in the world. I want to conclude with the following summary and recommendation. I'm done. We need to intensify initiatives such as bilateral currency swaps, regional payment systems, and the development of alternative financing mechanism to promote multipolarity and reduce dependency on a single currency or single financial source. We need to encourage use of local currencies in trade and investment among BRICS nations to enhance financial stability and security for these economies. It's pleasing to note that there are some of the BRICS countries that have started this, using their own local currencies to facilitate trade amongst one another. And let's enhance that and strengthen it, right? We need to embrace diversity because that is our strength. Not uniformity, diversity, right? We draw from each other's strengths and also transfer knowledge. Foster inclusivity, I've said it. Promote collaboration amongst policymakers, business, and investors. There must always be those ongoing debates among businesses, a business summit, right? The investors amongst BRICS having a conference talking about investing. We have some SEZs and ITZs in South Africa, right? More investors coming in, plow their money, destroy this unemployment, and we all will benefit from this. Promote technological innovation and strengthen multilateral institutions will be essential for navigating the complexities of the multipolar financial system. The strength of our growth in BRICS is nothing else but technological innovation. If you do not innovate, then there is no way to grow. What is innovation? We as BRICS, we should be disequilibrating our economies. What do I mean by that? You destroy the status quo. You destroy the equilibrium to build a new one. And people can say in the world, BRICS are leading, others follow. Can only be to that point of innovation. BRICS should play a complementary role to the existing global financial architecture. I'm not saying destroy the big guys. No. How do we fill the gaps? NDB to serve as a complement, filling gaps left by existing institutions, especially in infrastructure and sustainable development projects. I looked at one study, one of my PhD students was doing this study. It's shocking, the backlog of the infrastructure in developing countries. It goes into billions of dollars, despite the so-called development finance that's coming from the existing big institutions. So as BRICS, we have a lot of work ahead to ensure that we all come to the level where we want to be as BRICS economies. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much. No time for comments. We'll go forward, and I'm happy to introduce Mahdi Fakhreddin from Iran, professor, School of International Relations, and the school is really supported by the Ministry for Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Science, and from its turn, school contributes to the activity of not only of these two ministries. Welcome, please, and the floor is yours. Mahdi Fakhreddin.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for the opportunity offered to me. Talking of financial institutions, I think we need to see what finance means. And that is very simply talking, is the income earned by export activities, which is a result of production capacity and is the safest way of getting finance. The second point, or the second best option, is foreign direct investment, which takes countries to bring their fresh money to your economy, invest it there, and jointly benefit from it. The third mechanism for finance is loans, either hard loans or soft loans, which could be a base of financial incentives for developing countries, but in the long run could have a reverse effect. And there, I think our South African colleague mentioned the African debt, and we are witnessing the Latin American debt as well, and the negative impact on that. Then the fourth one could be technical assistance of financial institutes, and finally the projects based in different countries and based on their profitability. Now, that being said, and given the scarcity and conditionalities of the financial institutions in Bretton Woods institutions, I think we need to find a proper response, how to deal with the member countries' needs in international situation, international financial institutions. A simplistic answer to that is to do what Bretton Woods institutions have not done and not to do what they have done. But this is only one side of the coin. There are many technicalities involved, and if we want to practice real politics, then the story might be different. As I mentioned, the first subject that we have to take into account is the interconnectivity of finance with trade. So if we are negotiating trade agreements at the same time finance is involved and vice versa, so the problem for developing countries is to be involved in both negotiations and trying to do their trade based on national interests, but also trying to access international finance, taking into account their development needs and priorities. So the BRICS, I think, is a useful instrument to try to fill the financial divide amongst global North and global South. And there, I think BRICS is well situated to avoid the conditionalities which have been observed in the past half century and which has caused painful results in, for example, Latin America after the structural adjustments, which they used to call it lost decade because of the results. So if sufficient funds and technical assistance are available within BRICS institution, then we could be helpful that BRICS could complement, if not replace, the Bretton Woods institution, assisting its member countries at the first stage and then other interested countries to use this framework. Now, the question that what should be done in the BRICS, I think a fair access to financial resources could be the result. But the nature of BRICS, I think, is based on the concept of policy space. Policy space means that if we are benefiting from BRICS financial resources, our sovereignty is respected at the same time, and we are allowed to practice our policies and our programs based on our own criteria and not anything dictated from any other institution. The third point is a non-discriminatory access to the BRICS resources, because sometimes there is a priority or a preference for less developed countries, and sometimes the opposite side. Bigger countries have more access to more financial resources. Striking a balance between developmental needs and financial needs could be the big part of BRICS assisting its member countries. And now, what are the financial policies and resources? I think one of the issues we have been facing, at least in the past 30, 40 years, is that financial instabilities always start in developed countries, but the headaches and the results are for developing countries. So how BRICS could find proper solution and proper policies to avoid these financial instabilities and to suffer less from that. I think the issue of CRA is a possibility, but it needs to be complemented by regulations and plans to how to face, with concrete measures, how to face international financial solutions and how to formulate scenarios on the negative impact of financial crisis on the developing countries which are on us. So another mechanism, which was mentioned by our South African colleague, was the credit rating. I think that's a long story, because in international financial crisis, those countries with AAA and AA ratings were more affected. So I think in 2008, everybody was thinking that we need to raise the credit rating agencies. What we can do is to have our own credit rating agencies, BRICS credit rating agencies with BRICS criteria, not always putting us in the hands of commercial banks, but also making banks subject to our criteria and to our disciplines in order to avoid weaponizing financial resources, because that is something that has been repeatedly experienced, at least in the past 5 years. Forget about Iran, which has been under sanctions for almost half a century, but in the past 5 years, Russia, Turkey, some other countries have been affected by this dollar weaponizing, and I think we need to think about it, to take this threat seriously and to find remedies to nullify the negative impacts. The sanctions is an issue of discussion in the financial arena, because sanctions always start with financial sanctions, but it's then will be expanded to trade sanctions, it will be expanded to technological sanctions, and ending in intellectual property rights, which we are witnessing, for example, the issue of pandemics and companies discussing always patents, limitations and restrictive measures on companies and countries. At the end of 20th century, we were affected by AIDS. When India, Brazil, South Africa came out with a generic plan to find the pharmacies. And if we are not creative enough, I think we need to be afraid of the results. Now, what sort of institutions we need to have in BRICS, apart from the credit rating institutions? I think other institutions like hedge funds, like insurance companies, and other regulating financial institutions will be needed, and that could be, a long way to go, but we need to start from some point, and we are in a good situation right now. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and very sorry for interruption. We are really lack of time, but your thoughts that you have presented, they are of an interest. They are really very precious. So move forward, and I would like to present Ali Benwari, Algeria, an expert of National Debt Committee and advisor to the Ministers of Finance and Economy in Algeria, and the former Minister of Treasury, and just a great friend of BRICS. Welcome, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Irina. Just to precise, I am no more advisor to the Minister of Economy and Finance. I was, but now I'm just, okay, I have a company in Geneva, in Switzerland, because I have also Swiss citizenship. And, well, that's had to be precise. The topic of this session is why the world is not becoming multipolar, just finance, which I translate as follows. Why the current international financial system or order is not conducing to multipolarity. To answer this question, we need to go back to the source of this order, but we can also think what has just been told by my friends here, to start thinking about how to create a new, more equitable multipolar world. That seems to me much more important than to describe why the ancient order is not multipolar, or no more. So the origins of this actual monetary system or financial system, because it includes monetary issues and financial issues. The World Bank, as you know, is in charge of financings and so on. So it was the creation of the IMF and World Bank by the Bretton Woods Agreement in 1944, July 44. But these agreements, Bretton Woods agreements, are no more valid because on 15th of August 71, there was a breach of what we can call a breach of confidence, or a contract of confidence or trust. The U.S. have taken a very heavy decision because the Bretton Woods agreements were based on confidence. I mean, you take the dollar, you accept the dollar, and we commit to change this dollar in gold whenever you wish. So the world was confident on this, and since 71, gold is just became as any ordinary currency, but maybe the worst currency. Among the factors which were behind this actual order, or behind the importance of the dollar, because when we talk about the international order, the actual international financial system, we have to talk about the hegemony of the dollar, because it's based on the dollar, in fact, because Bretton Woods gave to the dollar a predominant place, and all the currencies, the other currencies, are turning around this system, the dollar, based on the dollar. But this has been reinforced by two elements. I have counted 4 elements which explain why the dollar is so strong, why the international monetary system or financial system is not multipolar. It becomes unipolar. It was, of course, the Bretton Woods Agreement, but also 2 strategic decisions taken on 1973, for one, and 1979. On 1973, the American forced the Saudis to accept to denominate the oil contracts in dollars. And then the OPEC countries followed. And then, little by little, all the commodities started to be denominated in dollars. 90% of the commodities now, and 100% of oil and gas contract until recently. And the second decision, strategic decision taken by the American, was the agreement signed by Jimmy Carter, president, and Deng Xiaoping, the Chinese president. You should know that this agreement, which has been signed, Henry Kissinger was advisor to Jimmy Carter. He was the Sherpa who came with this idea. Secret part of the agreement was, there is a Chinese lady here, she can confirm, just in case. The second part of this agreement is that China is authorized to export as much as it wants to the US, provided that the surpluses are invested in US T-bonds, treasury bonds. That's the deal. And big deal, heavy consequences. Also on the technical level, this is the fourth reason why the dollar is so predominant. It's the size and the depth of the financial market. One should know when we talk about creation, setting up of institutions for the BRICS, when we talk about a common currency, we should know that the dollar is not, it's not as simple as it looks, because the stock exchanges, American stock exchanges, or generally the financial markets, US financial markets, is so large. It can absorb this huge quantity of dollar which are created, generated by the structural deficits of the budget, US budget. We should take this in consideration. And this has led to the hegemony of the dollar and its weaponization. I mean, the dollar is an arm, is a weapon. It's not a currency. When we talk about currency, BRICS currency, we should, which in replacement with the dollar, it's like you create a weapon against the weapon. I mean, you attack a weapon. You don't attack a common, simple, ordinary currency. And this has been, permitted or allowed the US to this weaponization of the dollar, because they can have as much as deficit they want, no limit, because the dollars you have in your pocket are used to finance the deficit, US deficits. Now, this year, it's $2,000, $2 trillion. Half of this amount is for military budget. $50 billion are for the CIA and NSA. It's the equivalent of the budget of many African countries. So, and John Connally, the Secretary of Treasury of the US, on 1971, when the decision has been taken not to convert the dollar in gold, he said, the dollar is our currency, but it's your problem. Okay, now we understood. Okay, well noted. It's our problem, so we will have to resolve this problem. But as my speech is in three parts, first part, the origin of the actual system, unipolar. Second part, contradictions. I said the system internal contradiction point to its limits. I mean, this system is reaching limits, some limits. So, and the third part is how to establish a multipolar financial order. Limits I was talking about are the backlash, I mean, distrust of the dollar and repatriation of American inflation. It's very important because now there is a lack of confidence in the dollar, so there are no more countries willing to invest in US dollars or in US Treasury bonds. So the central bank, Federal Reserve, is replacing the dollars or the Treasury bonds China is selling. Or even if China don't sell its balances, the new deficits are to be financed in another way. So the central bank, Federal Reserve, if you see the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, is increasing and increasing. I mean, and it generates inflation because in the past, all of us were, by buying dollars, we attenuate the pressure on the inflation. Now, there is a repatriation of the inflation. And also, the Ukrainian war, the COVID, the destruction of Nord Stream, all this are leading to a lack of confidence in the US. The sanctions also, the sanctions the US are taking against more and more countries are clearly pointing that the system, the old system, is reaching its limits. So how to establish this new order? Well, by changing the rules of games, amending, reforming the statutes of the IMF and World Bank. Okay, it's evident. You talked about this, pointed out this question, but you should know that as the US used to do in the Security Council by opposing its veto to any decision taken by the international community, the IMF and World Bank, within these two institutions, the US has 17% of voting shares in the IMF and 15.8% in the World Bank. And why? Because they decided that the decisions, the percentage needed to amend the statutes is 85%, not 75, not 66. It's 85 because the US have more than 50%. So they block. How can you do? Nothing. You can't do. Well, you can't do anything. But alternatives. So.
Dear sir, 1 minute left, sorry.
Yes. So then, it has been discussed. The BRICS started to innovate in creating alternative institutions, multilateral institutions, use of local national currencies and so. And also discussed, what is discussed is a common currency. This common currency is so complex issue. It's the main part of my speech, but I don't have time to do it, so I will go directly to the conclusion. So, but I can resume, is it in 7 points? Forgive me if I can't enter in details. First point is conceptual problem. We should talk about this, conceptualization. Are you talking about currency reserve, payment currency, reserve currency, account currency? Of what are we talking? You know altogether that it is impossible to create a common currency for payment, for reserve. No, it's impossible. Forget it. Forget it. We don't have time, but we can develop, explain why. At least not before 10 years or 20 years. But we are in a war. We are in an emergency case. We cannot wait. So what to do? Then, this is the starting point of my speech, is international unit of account. We should create an international unit of account. And let me also, okay, 4 points, don't have time, but this international unit of account, we have talked about how this unit of account or how this, at what this currency should be indexed. We have talked about a link to gold, impossible. Existing currency such as renminbi, impossible. Stable cryptocurrency, impossible. To one or more commodities, impossible. To a composite unit of account, impossible. I mean, there are objective reasons, but I don't have time to develop, but I can send you my report, a copy of my intervention to all of you if you are interested. The idea is abound, but non-solution put forward is satisfactory. The consensus, just consensus, and we are talking of a unit of account, is a basket of something that unites the members, but which has yet to be defined. And in my opinion, and let me take just 3 or 4 minutes more, please, Elena. just to mention that why I was thinking about the SDR of the IMF. The SDR, special
I'm
drawing.
awfully sorry. The thing is that
Yes,
you have
yes, yes.
promised just to submit
Yes.
your report material. Probably we'll return to
Okay.
the discussion later. Yeah,
Okay.
we really appreciate your opinion,
Yeah.
but I'm very sorry. There is 1 minute left.
So
If you have
you
something
don't give
to
me
say.
2 minutes. We negotiate.
There's another participant,
Just
and
conclusion.
we should
I
strictly
conclude.
finish our discussions till
Yeah.
6:30. Sorry.
Okay, I just conclude that to say this international unit of account is the starting point of the reform of the international system. It's very easy. And then you sell me, I say, I buy and sell within this unit, and we make a clearing house to settle the balance. It's very easy. And my conclusion is politic, if you permit. This is just to say that we should enlarge, expand the numbers, the group, the BRICS group. It should not be limited to a certain number, and the criteria should not be technical. GDP, inflation, foreign assets, I don't know. This technical is a trap. C'est un piège, it's a trap. Please break this approach. The enlargement, expansion of the BRICS is the key factor of success. The more the number of the BRICS members are numerous, the more they can create rapport de force, how to say, balance of power in their favor in order to force the Western countries to accept us, to accept that they are no more alone. We dictate the rule of games because we have the instruments, the alternative instruments. They will come to this obligation because in the meantime, we will prove them that we can live without their institutions. And this is philosophically or tactically or strategically the best way. We create alternative institutions, but we don't miss the final goal, objective. The target is the reform of the international monetary system. We are the world. We are a part of the world, and we should think differently. We should think about a global system and not a parallel system. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, and we are looking forward to getting your report. Then we'll make the qualitative and quantitative assessment of your proposal, and we'll certainly return to the discussion later. Thank you very, very much indeed. And I'm pleased to invite Michael Yershov, Professor of the Financial University under the government of the Russian Federation, Chief Director of Financial Research and Head of the Financial Analysis Department, the Institute of Energy and Finance. A lot of publications and very useful. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I want to thank our speakers for their very insightful presentations. And I took some notes that I want to share with you within this limited time frame, within 3-4 minutes or so. Okay, that some of our speakers have raised. Indeed, there's a general, absolutely correct conclusion that is made that the BRICS countries should play a more significant role in the world financial system. Apparently so, of course. Who cares? I mean, we all do care about that. But this is not only the geopolitical question, but also a technical question. And so many of us, many of you, in fact, raised some questions how to address this very challenging task. One important thing is that, of course, local currencies should be used more intensely. But one thing that I want to draw your attention to, volatility. Of course, the more volatile the local currency is, the less attractive and more cautious we all should be vis-a-vis such currency, which means that though the question can be resolved if all of us, if all of you, reassess and revisit the regimes of foreign exchange regulation and the sort of obligations that we all took before of non-interference of free float should be somehow reconsidered, bearing in mind that the environment has been changed, as is the case, by the way, right now of Japan, the country which announced a free float of the Japanese yen, but if need be, they intervene in terms of their foreign exchange regulation. Full stop. That's it. So why shouldn't we, us, do the same thing if need be? Question with apparently reasonable and positive answer. Thing number two, which I mentioned the thing. A professor from India has mentioned the very rightful and very acute conclusion that our regulatory system seems not to be quite sort of adequate to the digitalization and digital approaches. Apparently so. Let me remind to you the event of last year, last March, when 3 US banks, or 2 US banks, went broke within several days, within sort of 60 or 80 hours. And they were, all these banks, such Silicon Valley and the like, were extremely promoted, extremely sort of digitalized, extremely advanced. Then again, question for all of us, which we all should be caring about this. Since digitalization is becoming more expanding, is becoming more prevalent, and apparently this is the objective thing. So such events may apparently occur in the future. What should all of us, regulators, business experts, be doing if such events do occur in the future? How should we, all of us, again, try to prevent such rapid deterioration situation as was the case with these 3 US banks? What regulatory measures should be undertaken not to let these things happen so quickly, if at all? Second thing, again, with questions with hopefully positive answers on our side. Point number 3. Apparently, our colleagues from China, colleagues from other countries should have raised the issue of the IMF reforms, that the IMF is not playing the fair, adequate role no more, that it should be reconsidered in terms of quotas, in terms of participation. It's apparently so. Again, big geo question, not so economic, but of course economic, but geopolitical, of course, as well. And I think the last thing, the last which, though, was mentioned by Mr. From Moscow, Mr. Steblov, who mentioned in his first presentation the need to expand, not to expand, to strengthen the sovereignty of monetary policies of each countries. Yes, of course we should, but again, event of the recent past, few weeks ago, correct me if I'm wrong, when the Chinese authorities have adopted the requirements which authorized their central bank of China, to allow it to be a purchaser of state Chinese government bonds, which, by the way, in the past was an extensive instrument of the US, of Japan, and then many more other countries. And right now, I think a few dozens of countries whose central banks, national central banks, play an important role in their domestic debt government bond market. Poland, 60% or so of the entire Polish debt is accounted by the Polish central bank. Japan, 40% or so, etc. Many long list of countries, which in fact lays basis for the sovereign, domestic, and not dependent on the outside sources of financial resources, mechanisms, and systems, which in fact permeates to what Mr. Steblov mentioned about the increase of the sovereignty of the domestic monetary policy. Again, question: what should, if need be done by all of us to promote this new model, which in the beginning was only the case for the major countries, limited group of countries, the US, Japan, maybe some countries of Europe, UK, and that's it. Now dozens of countries do play the same role, which should, I think, be expanded in the future. That's it. Thank you. But again, I say our technical discussion was extremely insightful, and I think it will help us all of us, all of our countries, to play a more significant role in the financial world, and in fact will help us build a more solid, more safe, and more just financial system in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I have the honor to thank you for your participation, for sharing your thoughts with us, for your contribution to our session. And we have some questions at the moment, one or two, not more. Just welcome, please.
Alexander Vorontsov, Institute of Oriental Studies, Russian Academy of Sciences. Dear speakers, thanks a lot for the really great presentations. And one short questions. BRICS pay system is available, creation of the pay system? And if available, when it's possible to expect? BRICS pay. Thank you.
Just thank you very much for the question. It's really very important. It's a burning issue for BRICS, and actually it is discussed by the central banks of our countries as well as by the Ministry of Finance. Generally speaking, to set up the payment system, it's not a problem because we should have common rules, common, more or less harmonized regulation, responsibility of the participants, and just the system of its monitoring. When it is, it can be. And it's really useful for our countries if actually we consider the necessity of the development of the settlements in national currencies. Then it's the good possibility to develop the BRICS payment system, not only for BRICS, but for the BRICS as the partners to Eurasian Union, to other countries, partner countries who are really interested in development cooperation on the principles of inclusivity, sovereignty, equality, and things like that. And it's really useful because our stock exchanges can also participate freely within these payment systems, and there will be less risks and just a good contribution to our activity. As far as the time limit is concerned, it's better to refer this question to our central banks, and probably during the meeting in Kazan, just while presenting and sharing the ideas of the introduction of payment system, there will be some time limits, some schedule. But actually, we consider that at the moment it's worthwhile and it is of an interest. Thank you.
30 seconds to add to this. Yes, of course, Irina was absolutely right that in fact, this issue involves a lot of technicalities: legal, technical, financial, instrumental, mechanical, etc., etc., etc. But I don't think we should be afraid of this, okay? Because I mean, like the Chinese proverb, which recently was used by our leaders during their summit talks, that the journey in a 1,000 miles must start with a single step. So we are, our central banks, I think, are prepared to do this because this issue, which was raised, is inevitable for us. Because if we want to survive in the new system, in the new financial world, with the competition with their various things, we should, of course, elaborate this mechanism on our own.
Another question, or just you would like to add? Welcome. There's a microphone.
I think if you refer to the Johannesburg Declaration last year, there is a BRICS Payment Task Force has been created, and they are waiting for the report to come. probably that report will guide what we are discussing today, what will be the roadmap. But the literature that we are reading, all our BRICS countries are studying on their own at how to transit to such a system and what will be the mechanism for that.
Very much indeed. Dear colleagues, the participants of our session, thank you greatly. Really profound contribution, because the issues are very important and we should think over about the research, and we'll develop your proposals with your help. Thank you very much indeed. And I would like to invite our participants for a joint photo. Thank you very much.